One last thing here. Do you guys want the closed captioning on or not?
That's probably helpful, I think, for accessibility to include that.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay, here we go.
Thanks, Tom.
You bet.
We're ready to go. Sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. We'll get started. Welcome to Win Wednesday. As we get started, a reminder that the session is being recorded and it will be available after the session. Usually it takes about a week to get posted at the website www.acceleratingwin.org. And throughout our session today, please feel free to submit any questions you have for our panelists using the Q&A function in Zoom. The Women in Industry Initiative is an initiative of the Roland School of Business at Point Park University. It's about educating and empowering, accelerating the success of women-identified students and professionals, and we strive to engage leaders, affect conversations, and encourage allyship through elevating experiences. We do have several current initiatives. Our Accelerating Women in Industry event that coincides with International Women's Day. We have our Win Wednesdays virtual speaker series and a Fireside Fridays, First Fridays speaker discussions. I'm Doreen Saletti with the Roland School of Business, here with my colleague Sandy Mervosh, and I'm going to turn it over to Sandy to introduce today's session.
Thank you, Doreen. We're really excited about today's topic, overcoming the gender retirement gap, reaching your own finish line. This is an important topic for all of us. Even if you're a younger collegiate, you really need to consider your retirement as soon as you enter the workforce. So with us today, I would like to introduce first Danielle Dietrich. She is a shareholder and Chief Diversity Officer at the law firm of Strasburger, McKenna, Gutnick, and Gefsky, one of the very few firms in Pittsburgh where women make up the majority of shareholders. Danielle devotes a large part of her practice to working with women in diverse-owned businesses and their owners. This includes assisting them with obtaining and maintaining diversity certification such as DBE, MBE, and WBE. She also functions as outside general counsel for businesses that are not large enough to require their own full-time attorney, but that still have a variety of legal needs. She assists with such issues as contract matters, business succession, intellectual property issues, collections, employment issues, and corporate governance and growth. Danielle is admitted to the practice in Pennsylvania, Ohio, and West Virginia. She sits on the Board of Governors for the Allegheny County Bar Association, as well as South Hills Interfaith Movement. Also joining us today is Erin Weber. She is a Vice President and founding partner of the Weber Group at Heffron Tittleson. She has her executive certificate in financial planning from Duquesne University and is a certified financial planner practitioner. Erin is also a certified personal finance counselor professional and a member of the Financial Planning Association. She earned both her bachelor's and master's degree in education from Penn State University. Erin now serves as the advisory board chair for the Penn State New Kensington campus. She has presented at international, national, and state conferences in the field of education and co-authored multiple papers in the area of maximizing educator effectiveness. Erin can be heard on the Ask the Advisor segment of Heffron Tittleson's Your Money and You on KDKA News Radio, and was featured on KDKA TV's Pittsburgh Today Live. She is guiding several initiatives to help women and college students become financially literate. Erin is a member of the Women's Leadership Council for the United Way and volunteers at the Center for Women, Strong Girls, and PA Women Work. Thank you both for joining us today.
All right. Thank you, Sandy. So I'm Danielle Dietrich. Thank you all so much for joining us today. And Erin and I are really happy to be here to talk to you about challenges and issues facing women as they're thinking about and planning for retirement. And Erin and I, as you can tell from our bios that Sandy read, are both passionate about women professionals, women in business. And that's how we were actually introduced several years ago by a former colleague of mine. And we kind of hit it off. We both have this passion. So we're happy to be here today to speak to you. If you could switch to the next slide, please. So we've kind of broken it down into 3 segments. First, Erin is going to give you some background and statistics about women and how they plan or don't plan, and the kinds of things that they're doing. And we'll use those as we go through the rest of our items here today. And then we're going to switch it to the legal side of things, where I'm going to talk about legal issues and planning for retirement. And we're not going into anything super in depth. This is to give you a flavor of things that you should be thinking about and considering. And our goal today is to get you thinking about what you have in place, if you have something in place, or if you don't have something in place, what you can, steps that you can take to get started. And then Erin's going to go into more of the actual money side of things as opposed to the legal side of things, and talking about different things involving planning for retirement, from saving and investing and those sorts of things. So I'll turn it over to Erin to get us started with sort of an initial overview of some statistics.
Perfect. Thank you, Danielle. Well, I'm excited to be here. Like Danielle said, we're really passionate about this. So today this is for you. So hopefully this will give you some information as you're starting to plan for your future. So a lot of times we hear about challenges that women face, when it comes to investing, but oftentimes we don't take a step back to celebrate our successes. For one, women control 60% of the wealth in our country. And it is estimated by the year 2030 that 2/3 of the United States wealth is going to be in women's hands. 83% of consumer spending is women, and 56% of current college students are women. We're more educated than ever, and I think sometimes we don't think about those things. But unfortunately, we do face challenges as well. The number one thing is women live longer than men, on average between 5 to 7 years longer. When you think about that, that's great, right? We live longer. But what does that mean? That means that we need more money in retirement, right? We need a larger nest egg. But the problem with that is that there's a $16,000 retirement income disparity between men and women. So we don't have as much in retirement and we're living longer. Well, why is that happening? Because of the gender wage gap, right? As we're all familiar, women are earning less on the dollar compared to men doing the exact same job. We also lack financial literacy. Women are 3 times more likely to fail a basic financial literacy test. So if we don't have the knowledge to be able to do these things on our own, we're really going to be struggling. Have not created a plan. Believe it or not, 83% of women over the age of 50 have not created a retirement plan. Why is this? Women put themselves second, right? Their children, their husbands, their parents, they always put them first before themselves. But today, hopefully you take this knowledge to be able to put yourself first in these situations. Some things that we can't control, doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman, interest rates, right? Going up and down, we cannot control that. Market volatility, if you've followed the market recently, right? We're on a good ride up, but we don't know what's going to happen from there. Longevity, right? The fact that we can outlive our money. And lastly, inflation. And inflation, a lot of people don't take into consideration. So think about if you went to buy a carton of eggs 20 years ago. They might have cost you about 75 cents. Here, 20 years later, they're going to cost you about $1.75, right? So we have to remember as we get older, things are going to get more expensive as well. So it's important to keep these things in mind. So women's thoughts on retirement. What is going through women's brains as they're thinking about planning for retirement? 84% of business owners are concerned about their retirement, that they're not going to have enough money when it comes to that time. Only 25% have retirement plans in place, such as a SEP IRA or a 401k. 56% plan to work beyond the age of 65 because they're unsure if they'll be able to retire at all. Will they have the savings and the nest egg they need in order to do that? 81% are concerned Social Security won't exist at retirement. Average Social Security for a woman is $16,000. Think about that. Can any of us live off $16,000 a year? Probably not, right? Might cover our bread and our water and butter, and that's about it, right? And only 21% of female workers claim that they're on track to the retirement goals. So women are concerned about retirement, right? They're concerned that they're not going to be able to retire at all, or if they do, will they be able to do it successfully as they imagine? So hopefully today, as we go through this, you have these things in mind and that we can give you the knowledge that you need to make sure that you're financially secure and preparing for a great retirement.
Great, thanks, Erin. So Sandy was kind enough to give you my bio, but to tell you a little bit more about why I'm here and why I'm talking about this and why I care about this. So I've been practicing for over 15 years. And as part of my practice, I've really started working with women in particular, as well as people of diverse backgrounds, and really became passionate about it and really just built great connections with those clients. It originally starts, a lot of times I get referred clients to help them with various certifications. And in doing so, I get to know everything about their business very intimately, very quickly. And so you form a pretty good bond there. So I end up helping my clients with issues beyond that. I've helped them with figuring out, okay, how do we bring more people into the business? How am I going to get out of the business? I want to retire. I'm done with this, but I care about my employees. What do I do? And so I've become involved in helping them plan out those things. And I've learned a lot of things along the way as I've been doing that. So that's why I wanted to share some of those things with you here today. And my goal, as I said, is really for you to start looking at your personal estate plan. And if you have a business, your business succession plan, which is essentially an estate plan for your business. Next slide, please. Right, you've probably heard the saying before that if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. As a business owner, if you are a business owner, you likely feel the weight of the world on your shoulders pretty much every day. You worry about your employees, your customers, your families, and there's so many things in your mind. So it's easy to procrastinate, put things off, or just simply prioritize other things. There is always something else to do. None of us are sitting there saying, oh boy, now I can finally get around to that. I've got nothing else to do. That's just not real. And particularly this past year, I think has taught us all that. So of small business owners out there, only 40% have any kind of business succession plan. On the most basic level, a business succession plan is what's going to happen to your business when you're no longer there. And it's estate planning for your business. And a lot of people, a lot of business owners, for some reason, don't like to think about this, but it's really important because you've spent your life, so much of your life building a business, and to not plan for what's going to happen to it, you're selling yourself and your business short. And then individually, only 32% of people say that they have a will. So that's just under a third of the population. And a will is a document, it's part of estate planning overall, that deals with your personal assets and what's going to happen to them when you're gone. The main reason people haven't gotten around to these things or haven't done these things is that they haven't gotten around to it. It's not like, oh, I don't think I need that or I don't want that. They just don't have the time and haven't gotten around to it. 42% of business owners think it's not necessary. And this is from Nationwide, the company did the survey that revealed that. And I would love to see follow-up questions on that. Why would you think that it isn't necessary? Is it because, well, I'm gone, not my problem anymore? But that's short-sighted if you care about your employees, your customers, your family. You really should think about a plan. Of business owners that do have a succession plan in place, only 48% discuss that with their lawyer, which just is very strange to me because that means that they probably did it themselves, in which case they probably missed some things. And only 40%, so even less, have discussed it with their financial advisor, somebody like Erin. And again, there's a lot of information and possibilities that you're missing out on if you do not consult with a professional during this process. Believe it or not, millennials are much more likely to have a business succession plan. About 61% of them have a business succession plan, while only 32% of boomers or Gen X have a plan. And, there could be various reasons for that, but one that let people think about is that millennial business owners tend to be more of a startup culture. that they're starting something and they want to sell it and exit. Whereas a lot of baby boomers and folks from Gen X made it, this is my life's work. This is what I'm going to do as I, grow older and retire and, pass it down to my family. Next slide, please. So what happens when you don't have a plan? So as a lawyer, I do like to say sometimes that I am a professional wet blanket, and I get to tell you about bad things that can happen if you don't do what your lawyer says. There's plenty of coffee mugs that say, if only I did what my lawyer told me to do. So if you walk out the door today and get hit by a bus, what happens? And maybe COVID has made some of us consider this more and get some plans in place, I would hope, especially those of you with businesses, because in the blink of an eye, everything can change. Nobody expects to have a stroke. Nobody expects to get COVID and get in a bad health situation. So, you could either, if you die or if you become incapacitated, which means that you aren't capable of making decisions, what happens then? And think about, if you're on a normal day, a lot of people hate to take sick days. You think, I have so much to do, they can't function without me. I just can't possibly stay home. Well, what if you just stay home long-term or forever? We get so worried about taking off one day, but we're not planning for what happens if we could never come back. And even if you have the best people in place, if something like this happens and you don't have a plan, you wind up with a really unstable situation. Even good people, it's going to lead to conflict and fighting and drama. It's going to be much more expensive to sort things out if you have a business and you don't have a plan in place and something happens to you, the owner. It's going to be expense on the company. It's going to be expense on your key folks, expense on your family, and that expense is going to go to legal fees. We always lawyers get paid a lot more to clean up the mess than to fix the mess beforehand. Accountants, and just, it's a lot of drama, and you don't want to put that strain and drain on your loved ones. So you can't take it with you when you go, but with planning, you can make sure that the people that you care about are taken care of when you're gone. And that's what this is all about. The people that you care about, whether it's your family, whether it's your employees, whether it's your customers, these are people that you have spent a lifetime building relationships with, and this is helping take care of them and things that you can actively do during your lifetime to make sure that they are taken care of. Next step, please. Okay, so to talk for a moment, going to the personal, which is the difference between a will and an estate plan. And people think that, people use them interchangeably sometimes, even lawyers sometimes do, because it's just, kind of in layperson speak. A will is a piece of paper. A will is a piece of paper that lays out, okay, well, I want Dorothy to get my painting. I want so-and-so to get my bank accounts, et cetera, et cetera. Estate planning is bigger than that. It involves counseling and talking with an attorney about your life, about your goals, about your loved ones. It's advice, it's that interaction. There's plenty of wills online that you can go download and fill in the blanks, but that is such a small piece and that may not be the right thing for you. So you're missing out on that advice, especially if you have, even if you don't have any assets, you may have more than you realize, or you may develop more over time. So some people also get a will and forget about it, and 25 years later, they're in a totally different point in their life. So some considerations that go beyond just the will. I mean, there's all these tools to help you achieve your goals for you and your family. Both during estate planning and active estate planning can happen during your lifetime and after your lifetime, after you pass. There's all kinds of trust that you can work with. There's gifting strategies to help you pass on wealth to your loved ones and minimize tax benefits. And these are all considerations that go well beyond a simple will of, who you leave what to. And it's not a one and done situation. As I mentioned, you shouldn't do it and set it aside, and then 30 years later you die and your life is totally different. Life changes, things change, relationships change, people get married, people divorce, there's death, changes in relationships. An example that I've seen a lot of is somebody says in their will, oh, I want so-and-so to be the guardian of my children if I were to pass away. And then you see how that person raises their kids, and there's no way you would want them raising your kids. Things change. Another example is if a child or other loved one that you would otherwise want to get money or other assets if you pass away develops some sort of addiction issue. And there are strategies that can be put in place that we can still take care of those people, but have protections in place to keep them from accessing and blowing through the money. Or if you have someone that it likes to spend, something called a spendthrift trust, and different ways that we can work about that. Now, I will caution again, you can do it yourself. There are online forms, but that can really equal disaster. And that disaster is not going to come to fruition until later on when you're gone. You can't come back from the dead and haunt us and clarify what you meant in your will or what you intended. So it's better to get it out now to avoid any kind of questions later on. Next slide, please. Powers of attorney is something I also want to cover quickly because it's part of your estate planning process, but most people are kind of familiar with the concept, but not really. So a power of attorney is a legal document that says who can make decisions for you on your behalf. And there's generally two kinds of powers of attorney that most people would worry about. The healthcare power of attorney, who can make healthcare related decisions about you, should that need to be done, should you become incapacitated, who can decide, what life support measures that would take. And it also goes to, where you would live. Would you live, at home with help? Would you live in a skilled nursing facility? And that's what a healthcare power of attorney deals with. A financial power of attorney is who handles the money, who can sell your property, who can cash in your life insurance account, who can make gifts on your behalf. And there's two ways of doing a power of attorney generally. There's an ongoing power of attorney, so that is valid from the moment that you sign it. So you sign it and then immediately that agent that you appointed, whether it's a spouse, a child, or other loved one, could go and make decisions on your behalf. Or there is a springing power of attorney, which means the power of attorney instrument only goes into effect if something happens to you. There has to be some sort of event. And generally that is, you become incapacitated and lack the ability to make decisions on your own behalf. And there's different ways of the different degrees of that. You can require certain things, but that's the two different powers of attorney. And people tend to misinterpret them or don't actually read the documents or understand it. And again, this is an example of you can download something from the internet quite easily, but if you don't understand it, you can run into some issues. So if you don't have a power of attorney, for healthcare decisions, the Pennsylvania statutes do have a hierarchy of who can make decisions on behalf of an incapacitated person. So that there is some help there. But from a financial standpoint, if you don't have a power of attorney in place and something happens to you that you can't access, like you mentally cannot, sign a check or whatever paperwork, it's really a big problem for your family. And I've gone through this with an extended family member personally. And I also, the other part of my legal work deals with nursing homes and individuals going through these issues. It's really a big problem when you don't have a financial power of attorney. Someone becomes incapacitated, nobody can access the bank accounts, and they can't do what is necessary, even if that incapacitated person's of limited means. Their loved ones can't do what is necessary to get their assets spent down so that they can qualify for medical assistance, Medicaid as people think of it, to pay for their nursing home care. And that becomes a whole big issue because if there's nothing to pay for their care, then nursing homes can go after the children. So just a word to the wise, if your parents don't have a power of attorney in place, really push them to get it because it'll make your life easier down the road. And you can also have a power of attorney for business purposes. And again, that is something that is usually on a springing basis. So only in the event of emergency, if you were to become incapacitated or unreachable, you get kidnapped or something just totally bizarre, but it's something that can help keep your business operating if something were to happen to you. Next slide, please. Business succession planning. A business succession planning is estate planning for your business. It's a plan of transition for your business. And this is something that I do encourage business owners to start earlier rather than later, because there's a lot of considerations. There's a lot of creativity that can take place, and it's, planning for your retirement and for your sunset. Instead of just waking up one day and saying, I quit, that's going to be a big mess. It's better if you're planning ahead of time and can figure out how you want that to go. You can get a transition in place. You can help people learn their new rules, and it just goes a lot easier. And you can also, as part of business succession planning, make sure that you are taken care of, your spouse, your children, co-owners, key employees. You can deal with all of that in business succession planning instead of having it be a free-for-all if something were to happen to you. So you can get that all laid out, and you can decide who's going to be best to lead the company going forward. Allows for that training and experience. And you can also either have a, okay, peace out, I'm done sort of situation, or you can gradually taper off over time. And because, the options for your business generally, when you retire, die, or become incapacitated, you can sell it to a third party. You can continue on with new ownership and leadership, whether that's family or other insiders, key employees, or you can close up shop. Next slide, please. And I mentioned there's so many different things that can be part of business succession planning. And really, can be anything you want as long as it's legal, and creativity is really possible here. Some examples, there's ways that you can set it up that you have continuing cash flow during your lifetime. So again, as part of your retirement planning, you could potentially have cash flow from a business that you were either out of or passed off to other folks. You can also provide for continuing cash flow for your spouse or your children or whomever you'd want it to be. You can also decide how business real estate is handled. For example, one thing that we sometimes see is that when there are multiple children and maybe there's one child involved in the business, maybe that child takes over the business while the non-involved child can take on the business real estate. And so they still get some of that income, but since they haven't been in the business, then you don't have to worry about getting a non-involved child coming into the business. You can also deal with tax consequences. When you are planning this out, there are a lot of tax creativity and different things you can do to minimize taxes and minimize everyone's least favorite uncle, Uncle Sam, from taking a bite out of whatever you are trying to pass on. And this is a huge area. People get specific extra degrees on top of their law degrees in this area. It's called an LLM degree. It's sort of like a extra special master's degree for lawyers, just on tax and different methods of tax planning. If there's kids that work in the business, we did talk about that, how you can deal with kids that work in the business versus kids who do not. I'm a parent of young children. It's all about treating your kids equally. Well, there's different ways that you can do that to try to not make anybody mad. And you can also assure that your family stays involved in your business, and instead of letting it go to outsiders and have that control and keep that as your legacy. And you can also talk about how to value the business, how to put a valuation on the business. We're going to talk about that a little bit more too. This is something that most businesses should have some idea of what their business is worth, because you use that for a lot of different things, for getting lending, but for planning and the tax consequences. So this is a general overview. You can talk for hours on this. And as I said, people get degrees specific to this. But just want to point out some of these ideas so that they are in your mind if you have a business and are thinking about what you can do later on. Next slide, please. So there are some unique issues for women-owned businesses that I wanted to point out because obviously we're focusing a lot on women here today. I mentioned it's really important to have a rough value of what your business is worth, both for tax planning and also if you're going to sell your business, you need to know what it's actually worth. And if you have any kind of certification, whether that is women-owned, minority-owned, women-owned small business, or anything like that, you need to consider how much of your value is tied to that certification. This can be industry dependent. The construction industry, that's huge. Being a woman-owned business in the construction industry or a minority or veteran-owned business is huge. And that's a big advantage, but some other industries, not so much. So you want to think about that. You also want to think about who are your customers and are they coming to you because of your certifications? So if you have that certification, know that it's not transferable. Anytime there's any kind of change in ownership, everything must be reported. You want to be aware if anyone says, oh, I've been wanting to buy a woman-owned business. Like it's not that easy. It's not that simple. And to me, that's a huge red flag. I've had people come to my clients and say, oh, I want to talk to you. You want to sell your business. I've always wanted to buy a woman-owned business. And what do we have to do to transfer it? It doesn't work that way. So these are some key issues that you want to think about if you have any certifications based on being a woman, a minority, a veteran, or anything like that. And you also want to make sure that if you are going to sell your business down the road, that you work with somebody that understands those issues, because there's a lot of folks that don't. There are, and quite frankly, from a business broker standpoint, they are almost all white men. There are very, very few women in that industry in Pennsylvania, and even fewer minorities. So that's why, this is part, if you're thinking about selling your business, that can be part of your retirement planning, but it isn't something that you want to put all your eggs in one basket on. And that's why what Erin's going to say in a few minutes is going to be valuable to you as well. Next slide, please. All right, as has been mentioned a couple of times already, planning for retirement is easier and better the sooner you do it. If it were up to Erin, you'd all start retirement planning the day you got your first job when you were 16 or started babysitting or something like that. But obviously that's much easier said than done. Saving for retirement is challenging. We all have bills, student loans, business expenses, mortgages, all those different things. It's really easy to put it off, like, oh, well, I got to pay off this credit card or do that or that before I can really start planning for retirement. But it's really important to do that in addition to all those things. And it's even more important if you're a woman, and there's so many more challenges we face. We're more likely to be caregivers, both to our children and to our parents. And in some situations, as my immediate family personally has, both, the sandwich generation, dealing with it on both ends. And so that's more distraction, time away, perhaps expense if you're helping cover expenses. For entrepreneurs, a lot of times they would rather put their money back into their business than trying to set aside funds for themselves for retirement. Like, oh, well, I've got this money, I want to invest it back in so we can get to this next step, and never sets aside some in a pot for themselves. Putting all of your eggs in one basket, in the basket of your business, is theoretically a nice idea, but that's putting all your eggs in one basket. And what if something happens to your business? And even if you sell your business, is that going to be enough to last you for the next 20 to 25 years, or perhaps even more, depending on how long you live and when you sell the business? Next slide, please. So there are some advantages of developing a retirement plan now, and hopefully you'll run out the door today and get started on this. You can't count on Social Security. Even as Erin said, right now the average for a woman is to receive $16,000 in Social Security in a year. And those numbers, they go up a little bit each year, but they are not keeping up with the cost of living or inflation. I see those Social Security increases. I deal with that a lot with my nursing home clients. And that is, you're not going to be able to live off of that. So you need to have something else to count on. And some people like to think that, oh, well, it's just me and my business. I'm a sole proprietor. I only have 1 or 2 employees. I'm not a big company. Both options can still do retirement planning. You can have a retirement plan for one person, which honestly, I never knew that until about a year ago when I met a professional in that industry, and I got educated on that. And there's also obviously tax benefits that come with planning and strategies that help you accumulate more and have less going out the door to the government. Business owners, even if you are making contributions for your own retirement, if you are an employee, you can still get certain tax deductions. So again, ways to work those taxes to your advantage. And finally, retirement account assets grow on a tax-deferred basis over time. You're going to pay ordinary income taxes on your withdrawals as you take out money during retirement. And so I think this is a great segue to go to Erin, who can talk about the actual nuts and bolts of the money side of things today for you.
Perfect. Thank you, Danielle. That was perfect segue kind of into some of the things that I'm going to be talking about as far as setting yourself up for retirement. Sandra did a great job introducing me, kind of giving you a whole background about me. But the one thing I did want to share with you is prior to entering the financial industry, I was a teacher for 9 years. So I've always had a passion for educating and helping people. Now I say I get to do it the most important aspect of your life, right? Making sure you have your financial freedom and your financial future in place. So that's really what brings me here today. And like Danielle mentioned, we're very strong advocates for helping women, in their financial future and with their businesses and those sort of things. So she did a great job kind of filling you in on some of the information as far as financially, but I kind of want to get into some more nuts and bolts with it. So the first thing I want you to do whenever you start planning for retirement, there's 5 questions you need to start asking yourself as you're beginning this process. The first one is you need to think about, what is your view on retirement? What do you view in your mind as retirement being? I really want you to think of retirement as being financially independent. Financial independence means that you have the option, not the requirement to work, right? That you have enough assets to do what you want to do, right? Provide a sufficient income in retirement and do the things that you want to do as long with leaving a legacy maybe to your children. So you need to have a view of what you think retirement is. Then you need to ask yourself, how much will I need in retirement? Retirement expenses are going to be a lot different than what you are doing while you are working, right? Will you downgrade your home? Do you plan on moving, traveling? Maybe you're going to still continue consulting and working and having income. So you need to think about, what will you need in retirement? What does that look like? And there's a lot of calculators out there like Fidelity and Vanguard. If you go online, they'll give you calculators to help you determine what that retirement income will look for you once you get to that point in time. Then you need to think about, how can I save for retirement? If you're working for an employer, there's a lot of company plans that help you do this, such as 401ks, 403bs, different versions of IRAs. And I'm going to get into more detail about those as we go through the rest of the presentation. Then you need to think about, how do I invest my retirement funds? Am I going to put this into stocks, bonds, mutual funds, target dates? You need to think about those different investments, thinking about how your retirement's going to look. And I'll tell a little bit more details about those as well. And lastly, ask yourself, am I working with a financial advisor? The quicker and the sooner you start working with an advisor, the better you're going to be in retirement. Like Danielle mentioned, if you're working with someone from that very first job, right, they're going to help you prepare from day one to make sure you are going to be okay down the road. So never think it's too soon or too early to be working with an advisor. The sooner you do it, the better off you'll be in the long run. So steps to take towards retirement. As we go through our career, we enter different phases of working, right? So we have the early stage, the middle stage, and the late stage. The early stage is that very first career you have, right? Working from years 1 to 5. So when you're entering your career, the last thing on your mind is retirement, right? You're thinking about paying off school loans, all your debt, all those types of things. But the reality is the early stage of working is the best time to start thinking about retirement. You have time on your side, and time is very valuable when you're investing in yourself. So some of the things that you should start thinking about in those early stages of your career is start saving into retirement accounts. No matter how much you can afford, you want to start saving early. Now, it might be very minimal in the beginning because, like I said, you're going to have a lot of debt and those types of things. But even saving a little can go a very, very long way. Use automatic contributions to help you do this. This will automatically take money out of your paychecks. The money comes out, you learn to live with it. It's like it never existed. And I really strongly recommend you doing that from day one because, like I said, it's like the money was never there. So you have to learn to live without it. So automatic contributions are a great way to start contributing to retirement plans. And like I mentioned before, begin working with a financial advisor. The sooner you can start planning for your future, the better off you're going to be in the long run. So the middle stages of your career, this is about years 5 to 20. So it's kind of that middle sweet spot. And at this point, you should start having a decent sized nest egg for your retirement. But unfortunately, the majority of American workers have not even started saving at this point. So it is really, really important to start early so you do have a nice nest egg when it comes to the middle part of your career. You want to look at all of your assets. You want to see, are they liquid or are they all tied up? If you're a business owner, is all of your money tied up in the business, or is all of your money tied up in your home? Do you have any liquid assets that if debts or anything were come to surface, would you be able to pay them off and cover your expenses? You also want to begin maxing out your retirement contributions. At this point, you should be pretty comfortable with being able to put in the max contributions. The more money we can put in, the more money we're going to have in the long run. And also you need to start now at this point thinking about what's retirement going to look like, right? Early stages, you're not thinking about retirement, what it's going to look like. You just need to know you have to start saving for it. But now you need to start thinking about what's that going to look like exactly? Do I need to start putting more money in my retirement accounts? Am I going to have enough money when it comes to that time? So now we enter the late stages of working, right? So this is 20 plus years. You're really getting closer and closer to retirement. At this stage, we probably are starting to get anxious, right? Am I actually going to be able to retire? Do I have enough savings that's going to allow me to do that? And a lot of people, you know, whenever I talk to them when they're getting later in their careers, they get nervous about this, right? You're not going to have an income anymore. Am I going to be able to afford the things that I want to do, or even just be able to afford to live on a day-to-day basis? So at this point, you shouldn't have to be worrying about debts. All your debts should be paid off at this point. So you want to really, really increase your savings. At this point in your career, you might be able to save catch-up contributions as well. Once you reach a certain age of 50, you can put extra money into them. So not only should you be maxing them out, but you should be able to put in those catch-up contributions as well. But you also want to understand that you might not receive a lump sum. By this, I mean is if you own a business and you go to sell it, you might not receive just a lump sum for that business. You might get paid over time. Or if you're working for a company, you might receive a pension instead of a 401k. 401k, you'd be getting a lump sum with it. A pension is going to pay you over time. So you want to keep those things in mind about how you're going to receive income in retirement. And also you want to start evaluating your investments. You want to look how your investments are being invested, because at this point you're getting closer to retirement. You don't want to be ultra aggressive, right? So we should kind of be dialing back on the stocks, being more conservative, investing more in bonds. So as we get closer to retirement, we can't take nearly as much risk, right? If we take that big hit, then we might not be able to retire at that point. So as you're planning for retirement, think about what stage of your working career are you in, because you want to start taking these steps. So some of the saving options for individuals. How am I actually going to be saving for my retirement? Well, there are employer-sponsored plans. So if you're working for a company, a corporation, they will enable you to save for your retirement. Some of those options, the most popular is a 401k and a 403b. I often get the question, what's the difference between a 401k and a 403b? They're essentially the exact same thing. 401ks are offered by companies and corporations. 403bs are offered by nonprofits or public entities. So there's just a number of the tax code, but again, they work essentially the same thing. They allow you to save $19,500 per year. Like I mentioned, there is a catch-up provision at age 50, and there is a traditional and a Roth version of this, which I will mention when I discuss the IRAs. There's also SEP, simple IRAs, profit sharing plans that your companies can offer. And also there are HSAs, which are health savings plans. These are plans that are offered by companies that have high deductible health plans. It allows you to save money pre-tax to pay for qualified education or educational expenses, qualified health expenses. I'm thinking about 529 plans. I'm combining the two at this point. So this also gives you a limit of how much money you can be saving for these expenses that you might have. But it's also a great way to save for retirement. If you don't use all of this money whenever it is for those expenses, well, think about when you retire, you still might have those medical expenses you'll have to pay for. So it's still a great way to start saving for your retirement. Now, say you're not working for a company, a corporation, and you just have a side job that you're working part-time. You can still save for your retirement. And this is actually additional on top of a 401k. If you are working for them, you can also save into an IRA, which is an individual retirement account. This allows you to save $6,000 per year, catch-up provision with this as well. And it also has a traditional and Roth version, just like the 401k and 403b. And it's very important to understand the difference between a traditional and a Roth, because you want to know how you're saving your money for retirement. Traditional is pre-tax dollars. So before you pay any of your taxes, it takes that money and puts it aside for your retirement. So you don't pay any taxes on the growth in the account until you go to retirement. When you're in retirement, you pull that out as income. At that point, you should be in a lower tax bracket because you're not reserving income. So that money is going to be cheaper for you. But you don't pay any growth on the account again until you pull it out. On the opposite side, there are Roth, which is post-tax dollars. So when you get your paycheck, all the taxes are taken out. Then that money is set up for retirement. You already paid taxes on it. The nice thing is this money grows tax-free. You will never pay tax on this money again because you already paid tax on it. Unfortunately, there are income limits though with saving into a Roth IRA. If you're an individual, you can make about $140,000 a year. And if you are a couple, you can make about $208,000 a year. If you get to those amounts of income, you're going to be at a high tax bracket. So it doesn't make sense to pay the tax on the money at that point. But it is very important to understand the difference of how you are saving for retirement. Go ahead, Doreen. Thank you. So saving options for business owners. So those are for individuals, but there's also options for business owners. And like Danielle said, even if you're just working by yourself and you have your own business, you still have an option for saving for retirement. One of them is a simple IRA, and that does stand for something. It stands for Savings Incentive Match Plan for Employees. Now, these are for self-employed or small businesses of less than 100 people. So small organizations can set up a simple IRA. There's a 401k, which like I said, is the most popular. Contribution limits, we actually already discussed that earlier. You can save about $19,500, but we don't want to forget those catch-up provisions as well when those come along. 401ks can be very costly to set up and to maintain because there's a lot of requirements that companies have to meet in order for these to sustain. If you are a solo owner by yourself, you can have a solo K plan as well. So you can set this up and this will really help benefit the owner and the partners in the business. So it's a great way to start saving for your retirement as well. But remember, you can have all these plans set up, but you can still be saving into an IRA as well. So women in investing, it's interesting. There was a study done by the Warwick Business School, and it found that women actually outperform men by 2% when it comes to investing. Why is this happening? Well, women trade at a lower rate. They're not seeking that immediate return. They're not trying to hit those overruns overnight. They're thinking long-term about investing. They have that long-term perspective, which is what we need to have, especially when we're thinking about retirement. 64% of women actually factor ESG concerns into their investment decisions, which is environmental, social, and governance. They're thinking about things that are affecting our country and our world. When men are only looking for that immediate return, right? They're thinking of what's going to pay the highest growth and yield to themselves. Women are actually better savers. On average, we save about 1% more than men do, which is important because we aren't earning as much money as they are. So it's great that we are better savers in that aspect. And most women prefer to work with someone, an advisor, to help them plan for the future. 47% of women prefer to work with an advisor compared to 27% of men. Why is this important? Because when we're investing on our own, emotions get the best of us, right? Greed is very compelling emotion that can make us make decisions that are not in our best interest. An advisor takes the emotion out of investing. They're looking out for what's in your best interest. So it's something you want to keep in mind as you are planning for the future. So how do I invest my money? We have all these tools out there that we can be putting our money into, but how am I going to be investing my money? The best way I say to do this is through mutual funds. Mutual funds are a security, which a security is an asset that you can buy or sell, and it's a pool of money that is collectively invested. So if we all invested in a mutual fund, there would be one person, a fund manager or portfolio manager, that would decide how that money is going to be invested. Is it going to be in stocks, bonds, money market? Is it going to hold cash? How is it going to be invested? Now, it's important to find a portfolio manager that has the same perspective as you on investing. So some of them might be very conservative, more in money markets and bonds. Some might be ultra aggressive and more stocks. So you want to find a mutual fund that aligns with your expectations of investing. The best way, though, to invest, if you're not a savvy investor, you're not following the stock market, is through target dates. And I'll be honest with you, I utilize these myself whenever it comes to retirement planning because it takes the guesswork out of investing. So what it is, it's a target date is an asset allocation based on your expected retirement date. So say right now you plan to retire in 20 years. We would find a target date of 2040. Right now, that target date would be aggressively invested because we're far away from retirement. As you get closer and closer to retirement, that mutual fund is automatically going to adjust itself and become more conservative. So you don't have to worry about it. This target date's going to do it for you. So it's a great way to kind of create an own portfolio for you without having to worry about it on your own. And there's two ways of doing this. There's to retirement and through retirement. So two target dates would be when you hit retirement at 2040, it stops adjusting. Other target dates go through retirement. So even though you retired at 2040, it's still going to adjust and get more and more conservative through that date. So there's different target dates that you can look at with this. But then there's also active management, working with an advisor to create a portfolio that meets your needs the most. So bottom line, the takeaways is you need to start setting your goals now. Without setting your goals, you don't know what you're going to try to achieve, right? You can't achieve something if we don't set goals to get to that place. Make the calculations. What are you going to need to achieve these goals at the end of the day for your retirement, personal, all those things? We need to make sure we make those calculations. Lastly, commit to saving. You want to make sure you are saving for your retirement. The sooner you do it, the better off you are going to be in the long run, because this is really going to help you reach your retirement finish line.
I want to jump in because we are just getting so many questions in from our audience. So I want to get us started on questions so we can get through as many as we can in our remaining time together. Thank you both so much for such a great presentation filled with information. And we do have some professionals and some students in our audience. So the first question that we got is from Caitlin. Is there an age that you think you should write a will by? So Danielle, this one's for you.
Sure. So there's no set age to write a will, but as soon as you start, I would say as soon as you start having anything, even as you start, working, get your first job, it's a good thing to think about. Certainly when you get married, when you have kids, and really, another rule of thumb, anytime there's a major life event, you should take a look at it and think, has something changed that I need a refresher? So there's no set age, as with Erin, it's always better, we'd always prefer to you have something early rather than later, but there's nothing specific. It's really whenever you want to, and we do encourage it earlier, but also to keep in mind that it's not a one-time thing, and it's something that should be refreshed as you go.
That's an important thing to keep in mind. And along those lines, another question, this one's from Bridget. Would a power of attorney get privileges over a beneficiary?
Okay. Now, I'm not sure of what context beneficiary is being referred to here. For instance, insurance policies could have a beneficiary. So, if I die, my beneficiary is my husband or my kids. And when someone has a power of attorney, that doesn't mean that they get everything. It has nothing to do with your inheritance. It's just who's making decisions. So theoretically, with some policies, a power of attorney could change an insurance policy beneficiary or a 401k policy beneficiary. And I would expect those companies to have the power of attorney really have to jump through some hoops to do that, because they're always very protective over that and looking for fraud and people doing bad things. And as much as we would like to think that people always do the right thing, there are a lot of bad people out there who steal money from their loved ones, and it's really bad. There's a lot of it in our area. I work with it every single day. So if that's the context that Bridget's referring to, that's the situation. A power of attorney just gets to make the financial decisions. And when you have a financial power of attorney instrument, you as the person, choosing your agent, choosing who can make those decisions, you can limit those powers. There's a whole list of different things that you can allow or not allow that person to do for you. So if you don't want them to gift your money, you can say that you don't want them to do that. So you can tailor it to your specific wants and needs.
So this sounds like a conversation that would be very important to have with your attorney to be able to make the right decisions and how to set this up.
Sure. And there's a lot of things, quite honestly, that you've never thought about. When my husband and I did our initial estate planning, which we need a refresher, a lot of things have changed in the 9 years since we did it. But there were a lot of things, even I as an attorney, I had never thought of. As an attorney in the area, I'd never thought of what I wanted those decisions to be. So it's also some good sort of tough conversations that you have to have with yourself and your spouse about your wants and needs.
Critical conversations indeed. Yeah. So Erin, we have some financial planning questions for you, and I'll bundle some of these together. particular age at which it's better to open an IRA, and then should the retirement plan that you have, should your employer retirement plan be sufficient, or should you look at having outside retirement plans in addition to what your employer might offer?
So that's a great question. So as far as, retirement plans with your employers and having additional things, it really depends on what your company is offering you and what the plan is. A lot of times, with teachers having their pension plan and those types of things, we don't know what's going to happen with those. So they have the option of saving to a 403B as well. So I always suggest saving on top of that. The more you can set aside, the better. It's not going to hurt to have more money in retirement, but it's really going to hurt if you don't have enough money in retirement. So the sooner you can start that process, the better off you are going to be.
That makes a lot of sense. That echoes what you've been talking about throughout our session today. So thinking about the future, Heidi asks if you recommend a 529 plan for future children.
I think 529 plans are great plans, and they're great things not just for your children, but you can think of these for your grandchildren. You can even think of 529s for yourself. I think a lot of times we just associate them with children, but it's a great way. Say, you graduate from college and you're thinking about going for your master's, you can start a 529 for yourself. If I thought Danielle needed to go back for another degree, I could start a 529 for Danielle. So you can literally open them for everyone. To me, it's my best gift to any of my friends that are having children, right? To open a 529 for them. The nice thing about 529s is you are saving that money and it's going to grow tax-free as long as it's used for qualified educational expenses. Another thing that has changed 2 years ago is that you only used to be able to be used for higher ed, for college or for trade schools and those types of things. But now you can actually use them for K-12 education if you're sending your child to a private school or something like that. So the sooner you can start a 529 for your child, the better off you are going to be.
And that's just amazing information to share with our current students who might be thinking about a graduate degree as well.
Mm-hmm.
There might be some benefit to them in considering a 529 plan.
Absolutely.
Great. Now, another question that came in, this is on the topic of HSAs, health savings accounts, from Bridget. Does the money you put into the account keep increasing every year and only decrease when you have a deduction, or do you have to use it in the year that you contribute?
It's a great question. So with HSAs, they are a investment account. So once you reach a certain value, it's actually invested into the stock market. So you're going to invest this money obviously very conservatively because you don't want to lose it in case you would need it. So HSAs are controlled by you, the person that is putting the money into the account. So it does not have to be used by year end. This can roll over from year to year. The account that you might be thinking of is an FSA, which is a flexible spending account. This is actually controlled by the employer. So most times they are written that if you don't use that money by year end, you lose it. So again, it depends on the account that you were talking about, but HSAs are controlled by you and an FSA would be controlled by your employer.
And typically the HSA is available when you're part of a high deductible health plan, correct?
That is correct, exactly. So the thought behind that is you're going to have to pay more money for your, expenses, for your medical expenses. They allow you to save that money pre-tax. So hopefully it's not as big of a burden to you.
And another retirement question. So we know that starting is early is important. You've mentioned that several times and really helped us to focus in on that. What advice would you give to faculty who are working with college students about helping them to understand how important it is to start saving for retirement, maybe now?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. This is one of the things that I'm very passionate about is regarding financial literacy. And I know, I'm very involved at Penn State and all universities. I don't think we do a great job educating our students to enter the real world, right? Understanding what to expect as far as saving for retirement or, questions in those regards. So one of those things I think it's very important to explain to them, show them in real dollars and numbers. If you save this much money per year, starting at, age, just give you round numbers. And I use this example all the time. So say you save $390 a year from age 25 until 65 when you retire. You will have 7 figures. You will have $1 million in your retirement account when you go to retire. And that's using real dollars and cents. And I think it's a really important when we're talking to college students to understand, to make them understand, how this can function if you start saving early. So I think that's the best way to do it, and having conversations with them, explaining why it's important, because again, we face it when we're, 18 to 20 some years old, it's really hard to have that view, on retirement. We want that immediate gratification. It's really hard to think of those delayed terms. But I think when we show them in black and white what that money can do for them, I think it can be really beneficial.
No, like so many other things, make it real for them. Help
Exactly.
them have to make it relatable. Yeah, and we have at Point Park a class called the Money Thing that addresses some of those financial pieces that everyone should know. So we'll work at getting them started early. Great. Well, we are running short of time, so I want to ask you both one final question, and then we'll turn it over to Sandy to complete our session today. Any final closing thoughts for our audience? And Erin, we'll start with you, and then we'll wrap up with Danielle.
I think the most important thing of this is taking your financial situation into your own hands. I think a lot of times we don't sit back and we don't take the time to think about ourselves in retirement. As women, like I said, we aren't putting ourselves first, but now is the time to do that. The sooner you can do it, the better, the quicker you're going to have that sleep well factor at night, right? Not worrying about your expenses, not worrying about your retirement, but the sooner you plan for yourself, I can promise the better you're going to be able to sleep at night.
I think that's great advice, and I definitely echo that. And then I would also say, don't be afraid to educate yourself, whether it's reading articles or books or talking with other people, such as professionals in this area. No one of us is an expert on everything. You're never going to be the expert. If you're running a business or you're a professional in another realm, you're not going to be an expert on retirement planning. So why shouldn't you contact someone who knows, more than you do? So don't be afraid to start learning, and start learning early. For those that are in college and younger, start getting an idea of what some of these things are, because we can all improve. And this is, what leads to the most stress in a lot of people's lives and marriages is money. And so, doing what you can now and learning about it makes you all the wiser and less likely to run into issues.
So we should be lifelong learners. All right. Thank you so much. Sandy, I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you. And thank you both for joining us today. Amazing information. I strongly encourage all the today's participants and anyone who views this recording in the future to reach out to Danielle and Erin with additional questions. The hour we dedicate to this topic today doesn't even come close to doing it justice. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today and give you some future dates. Our next WIN event will in fact be April 7th, and we're going to find your passion through curiosity and challenge, how to develop productive professional relationships with Diane Ramos. We also have a April 21st event, Impact of Domestic Violence in the Home and Workplace and Community with Roxanne Epperson. And our next event actually is going to be a Fireside Friday. It is on April 2nd, and it will be on diversity and equity and inclusion in sports. It will be in collaboration with WISE, Women in Sports and Events, and Power Play series. We will be featuring Jennifer Hawkins of Sports Pittsburgh, Sean Gibson of the Joss Gibson Foundation, Delvina Moreau of the Pittsburgh Penguins, and we will also have a representative from the Pittsburgh Pirates and more. All of these events and other events can be registered for at acceleratingwin.org. Also, recordings of past events can also be found at our website, acceleratingwin.org. Any information you're interested, RFPs, questions about WIN, please always feel free to reach out to myself or Doreen. And here are our emails, and you can also contact us through our website, acceleratingwin.org. Again, I want to thank Danielle and Erin for joining us. Amazing information. And as the final parting words, Doreen and I always like to end with a reminder that please remember you are not alone, and together we can make a difference. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope to see you at the next WIN Initiative event. Thank you.